Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm thrilled you can join us today. We're going to be having a great conversation about adult day programs. And, you know, there's not a lot of them around since COVID. And so I'm really, really excited to talk to the CEO of Hannan Center, which is a Detroit-based nonprofit that is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life of older adults in the Metro Detroit area. So before I introduce you to Vincent, I am going to recommend that you go to alzheimersspeaks.com. That is our main site. We have all kinds of free educational resource materials, and I really hope that you will take advantage of those, as well as our sister company, dementiamap.com, which has resources from around the world that you can access for free 24 hours. You don't need a password, make an account, anything. Both sites just want to keep it simple for you. So with no further ado, let's go talk to our guest. Well, Vince, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. So first of all, thanks for taking the time. I think adult day programs are a critical support for families, and I don't think there's nearly enough of them, especially after COVID. So I'm going to have you first start out introducing yourself to our audience, because you can do a much better job than I can. And we'll go from there. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Lori, first of all, for having me on. But my name is Vince Tilford. I am the president and CEO of Hannan Center here in Detroit. We are a 100-year-old organization that has been serving seniors that entire time. That is all we do, is serve seniors. And so, you know, that's pretty much who I am. We offer a lot of different programs, but we can kind of go into that as well if you want.
Okay. Wow. 100 years. You don't hear that too often.
No, you don't.
For businesses. So I'm excited to learn more. But before we dive there, have you been personally touched in your own family or circle of friends with dementia?
Yeah, when you said that at the beginning, I thought that was an interesting question because I don't know that we understood it that way years and years and years ago, right? But I firmly believe that my father had dementia. I mean, he had some of the classic behaviors that you'd hear about leaving the home and not being able to find his way back home, leaving, back in the day, this is probably early mid 80s, leaving the pilot light on without it being lit on the oven. So you had the gas ovens. And so my mom was his primary caregiver, but he was never officially diagnosed. But when you hear the stories today about what people experience with their loved ones who are living with a dementia diagnosis, and you hear about those behaviors, it makes me think that's what my dad had as well.
My mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and hers started in the mid 80s too. And
Hmm.
she was actually misdiagnosed for 10 years. They just kept blowing it off to it's hormones, it's hormones. And my mom would be talking with her girlfriends, and she would tell her doctor, "This ain't my girlfriend's hormones. This is different what I'm experiencing from what they're experiencing. Yeah, I have the hot flashes and things, but there's a lot more, to this." And
Absolutely.
back then people didn't even use the word dementia. It was really only Alzheimer's, and that was very little. It was still more of the senile and things like that back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the part of the reason, a couple of reasons perhaps why he was not diagnosed. But one is that you've just mentioned, that it was seen as a normal part of aging.
Mhm.
So he was in his mid 70s when he passed. but they just thought it was a normal part of aging. And then the other thing too, within the African American community, dementia tends to go undiagnosed at a rate that's about twice the number in terms of the rest of the population. So I think, those two factors potentially, what resulted in him not having a diagnosis. But I said he had all the, I could give you more examples, but when I hear about what people are dealing with today and I think about what my mom and my family went through, I says, oh, that is like verbatim.
Yep. Yep. I see that too. I see that too. Well, let's talk about the Hannan Center and what makes it so different, that it's lasted 100 years, and why it's so important.
Well, thanks again for that question. And I tell people that Hannan Center, if we talk about the social safety net and we think of the social safety net as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Well, Hannan existed before the social safety net. We existed 10 years before Social Security and 40 years before Medicare and Medicaid. And the reason why I sort of make that sort of comparison is we were doing all of those things for older adults before the social safety net existed. So we were giving them a pension, essentially, a lifetime stipend for people who were eligible, qualified for our programming. If they needed medical services, dental or vision services, we would pay for that as well. And then, we would certainly help people with their incidentals if they needed, like just groceries or whatever the case would be. So that's why I think it's so important because we were doing this. I think we were in sort of the forefront of what was going on. I think the other thing that makes us a little bit different and unique is that social work was kind of in its infancy when we started. I think the schools of social work were just sort of getting started, but they were mostly focused on children and families. And so I believe that we are the first, if not among, we're among the first, if not the first in the country to hire social workers who specialized in older people and to work to provide case management support to them. So that's another reason why I think that, why it's so important to sort of not only the Hannah story, but also the Detroit story. And then the final thing that I would add is originally, so we were founded by Luella Hannan. She was married to a gentleman who ultimately started the National Realtors Association. And he died in 1917. And when he died, he left Luella, his estate. And as you can imagine, I mean, his estate was sizable for that time. And when he did, you can imagine that this was not a time that was conducive for women to be managing things like this, right? So long story short, they took her to court. Her, his relatives tried to take it away from her. And I think one of the things that did for her, and she prevailed, but I think one of the things that did for her is that she saw how quickly an older woman could lose their livelihood because people didn't think they were fit, and they weren't, they didn't have the support and resources that you might find today. So I think for those reasons, and I think Hannon sort of set out a model that has proven to be something that is useful for all older adults. We see it now with Social Security. We saw it with pensions, Medicare, Medicaid, all of those things that people are doing or the institutions are doing today is what we did before they existed.
Wow. Well, I learned a lot there because I was a real estate agent for 25 years and I didn't know who started the association. And boy, I am thankful for her in her gumption. I mean, I remember I'm 66. So I remember when I was like 14 years old, my mom's like, you got to open a bank account. You have to get your own credit because that was something women didn't have. I remember, in my early 20s, having to wear a three-piece suit or a skirt and blazer to work and you had to wear heels.
Mhm.
I mean, it was so different than what it is today. And I can't imagine 100 years ago. I mean, that's going back like 50 years ago, you know.
Well, it is. And you think about it, in 1917, when her husband died, and he was the one who started, ultimately, that ended up becoming the National Realtors Association. But when he died in 1917, that was before the 19th Amendment was passed, which gave women the right to vote.
Yep.
Women could not open a bank account without a male signature. You couldn't serve on a jury. So, yeah, those were really difficult times. And the fact that she prevailed, and I think that really became her motivation for wanting to start a facility that would house older people who had lost all other means of support. That's really what she was trying to do. And she wanted to do this. I don't know how familiar you are with our area, but Grosse Pointe is probably a community that's probably known around the country. I have 5 different communities in Grosse Pointe, and they wanted to put an older person's facility in Grosse Pointe at that time. So after she won her first battle against her in-laws, then a few years later, they bought a house in Grosse Pointe, and they were going to move in older people to have them be taken care of there. And they passed the ordinance in the middle of the night saying that we don't want an old folks home here in our community. So for the next 40 or 50 years almost, we helped people to age in place. So we supported them wherever they were, either they're in their homes, even if they were living with other family members who were struggling. Because you got to remember, Great Depression era, this was really difficult times. And so we were supporting them where they were. And as going back to your earlier question about sort of what makes this an important part of our Detroit story, I would also say that we were practicing this concept called aging in place right from the very beginning because we couldn't find a place for to where we could build and house older people who were in need of support.
How sad that that was just fought tooth and nail. And yet, prior to being in real estate, I was in healthcare in the group home industry. And
Hmm.
so, again, this is a much later time period, but boy, neighbors would fight those small group homes, and
Oh, absolutely.
did not want them. And yet, we're all going to age, we're all going to need help sooner or later. But the fear wrapped around aging, I can't even imagine what it was like then, but it still exists today. There's
Oh,
so
yeah.
so many misconceptions. Well, kudos to her. I just, that's fantastic. Now, in reaching this milestone, how have you guys celebrated in the community?
So we've done it in a number of different ways. Man, October, Laurie, has been an amazing but very hectic and busy month for us. So our first event was we did an exhibit at the Detroit Historical Museum where we told more about the Luella Hannan Memorial Home story about Luella Hannan. So we have an exhibit that's up there, and then I did a presentation to provide attendees just some background information and history on the organization and our founder. Then one of our signature programs for Hannan is what we call our Emerge Art Festival. We really believe that art has the power of improving one's overall health outcomes. We base this on a longitudinal study done by a guy named Dr. Gene Cohen. Long story short, when older adults receive robust arts education, they have fewer doctor's visits, few medications, and they report overall well-being. So we try to incorporate that art programming into pretty much everything that we do. That's kind of pretty cool that we can do that. But I think the other part of that, why we do that, is it reduces isolation and it's an opportunity for us to create programming around advocacy, education, and support for the seniors. So I think that the fact that we've been around 100 years, how we've celebrated that is through those different programs. Sorry, last weekend we had a celebration for centenarians. I went out and I interviewed centenarians. I found 9 centenarians. 5 were able to attend our celebration. So we created a video that we called 100 Years of Wisdom. And that was shared with them, and then we gave them little gifts to sort of celebrate them. But again, told them a little bit about our history and the reason why we exist is to help people like themselves to age in place, to live their lives with dignity without have to worry that they're going to be isolated and pushed off into the corner somewhere. Then this coming weekend, we are going to kind of culminate our 100th anniversary celebration. But we coupled it with another signature event that we do, which we call 70 over 70. So I don't know if in your community, Lori, if you have a Crane's business newspaper there, but across the country, Crane's is a business newspaper that does these programs called 40 Under 40, where they recognize 40 outstanding um, people, professional people who are under the age of 40. Well, we do something similar. We call it 70 over 70. We recognize 70 individuals across 7 different categories. And we're going to be awarding them or honoring them, I should say, next Saturday. So, and then we're going to probably do another presentation at the Detroit Historical Museum as well. So I know it's a long answer to your question, but we're doing quite a bit to try to celebrate our 100th anniversary.
I want to go back to when you were talking about the art programs, because that is so critical. I do a thing called Dementia in the Arts, and
Mm,
people, we interview them and we showcase their work. But the common theme with everyone we've interviewed is they say when they're in the zone, their symptoms just melt away. And there's this calmness and this peace, and yet the stigmas are so strong that they can't learn, they can't do, it's not possible for them. And it just saddens me that we take that away before we even try, because their work is incredible. And I think that's wonderful that you're showcasing that and really incorporating that. I believe those social interactions are, and this is just my personal belief, I'm not a medical professional by any stretch, but I think it's those social connections and that sense of pride and sense of community that makes people want to live and want to
mhm.
thrive. And I just think that is so still undervalued in so many ways in our healthcare system.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because having purpose and having community is, I think, essential to us being able to age well and with less or fewer issues. One of the things when we had our centenarian celebration this past weekend, one of the things I shared with them is that there's you've probably heard about this, Lori, these areas around the world they call blue zones.
Mhm.
And so explaining to them, these people live to an age of 100 at a rate that's several times what you find in this country. And when they did the research to try to see what was the commonalities across these blue zones that led to this longevity, and diet may have had a little bit, but their diets were very different, across their, obviously different DNA is going to maybe play a role in it. But one of the two things that they found to be consistent across all these blue zones is having a sense of purpose. Why do you get up in the morning? What is it that is going to drive you? And then being a part of a community where you're valued. Here we tend to isolate seniors if we can afford to, and we put them in senior living facilities, nursing homes, and that's where they are. And so they're not part of an intergenerational community. That's kind of an artificial way in which we treat our seniors. But in other parts of the world, seniors are very much integrated into the community, into the homes. I know for myself and my family, my mom lived with us until she passed at 95. She lived with us for over 20 years, was very active, was very helpful with helping doing things with my kids when my wife and I were at work. And it gave her purpose, is my point, is that I'm making here. And we couldn't pay for the kind of help and support that we got from my mom. So but most people don't do that. So as I said, it's a shame how we treat seniors in this country, but I think if we can give them purpose and make them an integral part of our community, which is why we focus on aging in place, that I think we can um we'll be much better off for it.
Yeah. And I love the 70 over 70. I think that's great. And then tapping into the wisdom of those, over 100. I just, we dismiss our elderly so much, and they are just filled with so much kindness and respect. And dignity and history. I mean, there's just so much to learn
Mhm.
from them. It's just absolutely fabulous. Now, is there any more that you wanted to add about your mission for the Hannan Center at all?
So we have basically three programs here. So our first program would be our sort of social work program. Actually, let me start with our Beyond You program, because Beyond You is where we have all of our creative aging program, what I talked about sort of at the start of our discussion. And so we have a curriculum of classes. You can, take classes that will progress to an advanced level. We have some just basic workshops, but the whole idea is to build community, reduce isolation, but give them robust arts training. We do that. Then to support that as well is we have an art gallery. We actually expanded it about 5 years ago, and the art gallery is for older adult artists and older adult themes. And
Mhm.
so we could have intergenerational exhibits, which we have had as well, but we try to make certain that they're older adult themes. And with both of those programs, what we're trying to show is that there is not an expiration date on creativity and talent. You were saying something earlier about art and dementia. And one of the things that I like about art is you don't necessarily have to have a memory. You just
Mhm.
have to have imagination. You just have to be, let your creative muscles sort of work. And you can do art, and it's something that you can do with your care partner as well, so that it's a way for you guys to establish a different kind of relationship versus one that's kind of hierarchical with, oh, I'm the caregiver and you the care recipient. Now you can do something together and have a moment that you can enjoy and remember, even if they may not remember the moment, but you know that if they got into it and they liked it, that's something that they can do again. Another program that's sort of related to that is our Emerge Art Festival, which is the art competition. It's a juried competition, 55 years and older. As I said, we had just had our art show 2 weeks ago. Had over, gosh, 100 artists, 200 pieces of artwork. Ages range from 59 to 93. So that's kind of our arts programming. Then we have social work. In our social work, we do case management. We do, or we provide counseling for seniors. We do what I would call community resource navigation. We have a program where we train AmeriCorps members to be community health workers. And so they can be that resource navigator for an older adult or for an older adult's caregiver who either may have difficulty accessing these resources or navigating how to get to them, or who simply may not have the time because they're trying to balance so many different things. So that's our, we do a lot of social work. We support probably about 1,500 people there annually in our social work programs. And then a big part of our social work program is our adult day program for people that have a dementia diagnosis. That opened, we opened that in 2020, January.
Oh, geez.
Yes. Opened January 2020. We closed it in March of 2020.
Oh,
Uh,
that had to just break your heart.
yes, exactly. And then we ended up reopening it about a year later. And you could see the relief. You could see the stress on the caregivers' faces as they came, barging through our doors, pushing them through and, almost literally sometimes running out, because that last year, that first year of COVID was so challenging for everyone. Imagine having someone that has living with dementia and they're sundowning and they're up in the middle of the night walking around and you can't get sleep and you're stressed and it's creating stress in the household. Your health might be worsening. So this is a service that we knew was needed, and our program has been oversubscribed ever since we opened our doors. And I like to tell people, I said, Adult Day is an opportunity for your loved one to still remain at home, and it's a much more affordable option for a lot of people who don't have the resources to go to some of the pricier assisted living or even independent living Those places can run several $1,000s a month. But with adult day, you can probably get a lot of adult day programs anywhere between, I'm going to guess, between 60 to $100, um, a day. So it's really a little bit more affordable than what you would find with the other programs.
Yeah. How long of a what hours are you open? I'll ask that. Put it that way.
So we're open from 9 to 5, but man, I got the best team in terms of our adult day program. And so they will come in, especially for those who need a little bit of earlier hours, or they'll wait around in the evening, if someone is late picking them up. We try to, and our program is there not only to serve the person who has a dementia diagnosis, but we're also there to serve that caregiver. So we do a lot of programming with the caregiver, and we try to figure out what are the ways that you need us to help you. And we ask them that question, what matters to you? How can we help you on your caregiving journey?
Wow, that's unusual to hear that, and that's one of the biggest complaints that I hear from families, and it's the one of the biggest pitches that I talk to communities and businesses. It's like, they might be hiring you for their loved one, but they're expecting service for their loved one and them to maneuver through this whole process, and it doesn't have to be that, in my opinion, it doesn't have to be that costly or that time consuming. It's just, you know, teach them what in terms of how to handle things, give them ideas on and permission to be creative in how they care. It's not black and
Hmm.
white. It's a trial and error thing with every single person out there. What works 1 second might not work the next. And that's just it. And so we all have to learn to be more flexible, and we have to be more intuitive or use our emotional intelligence and read the sensory language that they're giving us that we overlook so often, or that we're giving off and triggering them a lot of times. It's
Absolutely.
us, on
Yeah,
those
yeah,
things.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, sometimes our caregivers just need a listening ear, and they
Mhm.
don't even realize that they need that. And there's a lot of trust building that has to go on to get to the point where you can serve that caregiver. And
Mhm.
once they begin to trust you, that's when they can open up. That's when they can find the time to now take advantage of some things that you might offer that will make their caregiving journey a little bit easier. So we do a lot of things to sort of earn that trust for our caregivers. Like one of the things we do on a quarterly basis is we do a spa day for our caregivers. So we'll have their loved one in our program, and then we'll bring in masseuse and um, other sort of professionals who can pamper them for a couple of hours, and our caregivers absolutely love it. We will do support groups for our caregivers. We have done programs, evidence-based programs to help caregivers that come out of the Rosalind Carter Institute or John Hopkins University. We use their, and I'm terrible with acronyms, but it's out of the John Hopkins Nursing School called TAP. And what it helps the caregivers do is to address behaviors that come with caring for someone that has a dementia diagnosis, and how to help de-escalate or redirect so that they both remain calm and and stress free. So we are very intentional about supporting our caregivers.
Oh, that's fab. I'm so glad we connected. It makes me so excited because a lot of what I hear like for adult day and stuff right now is in a sense COVID is, well, we don't go because the hours have shortened, and by the time I get them there and get back home, I got to go back and get them again, and that's not helping me.
Yeah.
It's not enough time for me as a caregiver to get a little respite. And so many people aren't tapping into it because hours have shortened, which all gets down to staffing, being difficult and things. Have you found, because there's so much turnover in this industry, I'm just curious if you've found more stability in your staff because you just seem so much more relationship based, which I think is And I know a lot of people out there will get mad at me, but it's missing. We've gotten so task oriented. And to me, that's what holds people because then they feel valued.
Yeah, I love your description of that. I would say we are very much relationship based. Um, and I think as a result of that, we've not had in the 5 years that we opened the program, we've not had any turnover there. Now, I will also say too that our direct care workers, we pay them a living wage,
Mhm.
which is important. But I hear for direct care workers for some places, like assisted living places or even independent living, that direct care workers are turning over like 60%. I mean,
Mhm.
the number is high. And so we feel very, very blessed. But as I said, we do provide a lot of training. We, try to provide time off, for the different points. We try to provide decent benefits. Obviously, this all has a cost, and it's all an expense. But we think it's worth it for our caregivers and for the people that we are taking care of to see the same faces day in and day out, to get to know those faces, to get to know what to expect from them. And you find that our caregivers and our recipients often form these bonds with the different members of our staff because,
Mm.
they look forward to seeing them.
Yeah. It's critical, and it's right now I'm looking for a family member, and
Mhm.
it is so difficult. And we haven't been looking at adult day. We've been looking at senior housing, from assisted living to memory care, and it's just so sad. I have a hard time getting people to call me back just to
Yeah,
get an answer, to get a tour, or the staff has just turned over pretty much everywhere you go, and they
yeah,
don't have the basic answers, or they give you misinformation. And so you think you're like, okay, this could work. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we put so much time into this. No, this isn't
yeah,
gonna work either. And it just breaks my heart. It totally just breaks my heart. There's no other way to put it. And I have found also, and again, some people won't like me saying this, and I don't care, because to me this is reality, and it's not just mine, but it's my caregiver group too, is they don't trust large companies anymore, because those that had good
mhm,
reputations and were able to maintain staff, and staff was trained, that's not the case anymore. So they're going place by place or service by service, and really eyeballing the staff, knowing the staff may change and it could all crumble again. And so, which increases everybody's angst on that level, from the community or the service themselves, because they're going
mhm.
nuts, on the hamster wheel, trying to keep things going. And from a family side, it's very scary. It's very, very scary. And I'm not seeing, things like you're talking about, as much as I would like, kind of with that dignity and grace and creativity in terms of keeping people engaged, especially those with dementia. It's either,
Mhm.
you're at this higher level, and if you've got dementia, then you're locked in, locked down, and sometimes 75% of the people aren't going to speak and aren't going to interact, and that's really hard when you've got a person who's early on in some ways, even though they might not have orientation of time and things like that. They're still interactive, and yet they're not going to get anything that gives them that back unless it's staff. And the staff are so busy, and really, and I know companies will argue with me on this, because they think they're training people to be relationship based, but they aren't scheduled enough to have the time to do that realistically.
Yeah, we not only train our staff, but we also try to maintain a client to, I'm using the term staff loosely
Mhm.
now, but a client to staff ratio of about 3 to 4 to 1,
Wow.
which is a pretty good ratio particularly for a facility that serves people that have a dementia diagnosis.
Mhm.
And we get to that ratio because we have our campus, our facility is located almost squarely on the campus of Wayne State University.
Mhm.
And so we have access to their School of Social Work, we have access to their nursing school, and also to their occupational therapy school. So we'll get interns from those schools that have to complete a field placement, and we'll
Mhm.
get them in many cases for several months. And so they come in to help out into the program. And so, to your point about someone may not want to interact, we don't push anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. We always let it be their choice. We really want to increase the agency of the people that are in our program. So we let them sort of decide, but we will still sort of come up to them. We can give them individual support through those interns or through staff to see what things are interesting to them. Kind of
Mhm.
say, just be there to assess what else is going on with them that might make it easier for them to participate, or maybe it's another type of activity. And we've seen people who were maybe non-communicative or maybe a little bit restless about being there begin to warm up, and they look forward to coming back.
Yep. Yeah, and it takes a while to adjust because it's scary. It's kind of like
Oh,
going back to high school and getting in the cliques and all of that kind of stuff. So, and not
yeah.
not everybody is, there's a lot of people that are introverts. And, one of my favorite sayings was by Harry Urban, who's still living with dementia over 20 years now. He said, "Sit on the bench with me. Feel the breeze, feel the sun, smell the flowers, listen to the birds, relax. I don't have to be busy all the time. I like to relax before my dementia. I still do." And
Hmm.
so I think there's a real good balance that needs to be made between just keeping somebody busy for busy's sake and then actual engagement that fills them.
Yeah,
And
you're absolutely right. Engagement is so key. That's one of the things that we want to make certain that everything, our programming in Daybreak, and even in our Beyond You classes, it goes beyond what I would call the hobby craft kind of things. It's not about keeping busy, although certainly that it will, but it really is about developing skills and talents. So, like as I was saying before, with creative aging or art, you don't need necessarily memory for that to be able to do that, and it's something that you can enjoy and you can feel proud of as well. I know we have occupational therapy is one of the things that we offer in our adult day program. One of the reasons that we bring them in there is we want to get those observations. Look at people and see how are they eating. Are they swallowing okay? Looking at some of their patterns, and then we give kind of an assessment to the caregiver, from our occupational therapist. So, we do try to, um, come up with other type of programming that we think is going to benefit not just that caregiver, but also that care recipient through that occupational therapy.
yeah, very, very important. I'm really impressed. I just think this is absolutely fabulous. The way you approach this. How do you guys, stay afloat? I mean, I know she probably had this nice little nest egg and stuff, but I would imagine you must need to do some fundraisers and stuff too to supplement that.
Well, as I tell people, Lori, I'm busier than a one-legged guy in a butt kicking contest. So I am out raising money, writing grants. In order for us to really provide what I would say is a quality program, we have to have the resources to be able to do it.
Mhm.
I want it to be a place where if my mom were living and she needed that kind of care and support, it would be a place that I would be comfortable putting my mother, right? So that, and I think everyone, all my entire team, they take that same approach. So there's ownership there, and it's not just the job. They really enjoy what they're doing and they love the connections. You got to find people who enjoy working with older people.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
so important. Not everybody enjoys working with older people.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people just don't know what to expect. The stigmas are so strong, and then they're
Hmm.
shocked once they actually, you know, are able to get past that, and go, oh, I can talk and I can learn and I can laugh and I can have fun. And they remember my name. Or what I hear from staff all the time is they're so kind. They're so kind. People aren't that kind anymore. They're not that respectful or that gentle, or they'll really listen, to what somebody is saying. And I think that has changed a lot in our
It
culture
has.
because we're all multitasking.
You're right. Is something that you said there that triggered a thought, but our care recipients, we did a program with them a couple of times where we brought in sewing machines,
Hmm.
and our interns worked with the people with the diagnosis in making throw pillows. So they
Uh-huh.
sold pillow, they sold together, put together pillows, and then they showed their caregivers afterwards, right? First
Hmm.
of all, the caregivers were super impressed
Hmm.
because they just like, I didn't know dad or I didn't know mom could do this, right?
Yep.
My dad was a police chief and I had no idea he had this kind of talent, right? But they light up because now they're having an opportunity to have purpose, right? They're obviously having community because they're working with someone as they're doing it. Um, and they can feel competent in something again as well. Because I think there's a lot of doubt and concern. Um, I can't imagine what it's like to have a dementia diagnosis and knowing that you can't, there's no cure.
Hmm.
And that, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Still Alice
Hmm.
with, oh my gosh, just a heartbreaking movie, right? But I was like watching her go through that. I says, wow, that must be so, so difficult. So I showed that movie to my team. And I was like, we got to keep this in mind because we are not in their shoes. And let's figure out how we could see the world as they see it and try to meet them where they are rather than trying to get them to meet us where we are.
That's so important. And there's some great movies out there now in terms of the
Yes.
realities of that. I know I had one that I would take around, and it's changed its name now, but a lot of people still know it by His Neighbor Phil, about a family living with this disease and showing all the different approaches family members would take. And everybody would think, oh, that person's crazy, they're doing this and they're doing that, but it's like they're just trying to help in their own way.
Hmm.
And just understanding that they're not trying to irritate everybody, they're just as lost as the rest of you, and they're going to go down their path of how can I help and what might work. And again, we get so black and white with what we're taught and what we're told, and it's pretty incredible, like you said, what people can do, and then that impact on the family of, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So
Hmm.
sometimes we shut the door on so many opportunities because we have been taught, and then we deliver, they're not able, they're not capable, they can't do that. And just think how that would make you feel, hearing that. Then you as a person is going to think, I'm not able, I'm not capable, I'm not loved, I'm not valued, I'm not, all of those things. And it's just like, oh man, I don't want to live like that. I sure don't want to set anybody else up to live like
Yeah.
that either. Because I always tell people, even with my mom living with the disease for 30 years, 27 of those were really good. The last three were difficult, but I wouldn't have given up 1 second because she was
Oh, that's
teaching
great.
me life lessons the whole way through.
Mm,
She was teaching me different ways to communicate, to slow down, where we were connected
I love that.
on a higher level than I even knew was possible, and even in
Hmm.
her passing, she would come to me in dreams and stuff then. So I've
Mm,
never really lost the connection. But again, you have to be open to believing that those things are even possible, or how important it is for someone to squeeze your hand or just give you a smile or a giggle. Because for me, I found those are the things that really stuck in my heart. It's not the big flashy stuff, of growing up.
mhm.
It's those little small, intimate moments, it was like, this is really what life's about, or taking the time to sit by somebody and just feel safe and comfortable next to them, and you next to and them feeling the same way, of you giving them comfort, just being in that space together. I mean,
Well, that's why I
how
love you have that memory. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, and it's how often do we take those things for granted, or
Mhm.
music, music we all use, but we don't understand the power of it. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, it makes me laugh and cry, and in the car at different times things can trigger, and we can use those simple tools, with somebody with dementia or any type of chronic illness. It doesn't make any difference, be a 2-year old or a 102-year-old. Those
Exactly.
those feelings don't go away, and I think we think, because they don't always have the facts right, that they don't have the feelings, but I find that the feelings are always there. We just have to read them a little different, and those are really our clues of what's wrong with the facts in the room, and it might be the lighting
Yeah.
or the sound or whatever that they can't always tell us on that. So, um, gosh, as far as your adult day program, the daybreak program, how many families do you serve then?
So we serve anywhere between 45 to 50 families a year. Obviously,
Okay.
we're going to have turnover in that, but that's sort of at
Mhm.
any one point of time, we can have about 24 people that's in the program. And that's just people who are actually coming into our program. We find that people find out about us, they find out if there's a waiting list, but they still need help as a caregiver.
Mhm.
So that's not even counted in that number, because we will then end up serving those caregivers. And then we also have the opposite thing that happens, is that once someone is no longer in our program, and obviously their person could have transitioned, or we become no longer an appropriate setting for them for whatever
Mhm.
reasons that they are, right? We then work with them to find another appropriate setting, and to still work with that caregiver to sort of, how do they transition there, and how are they, if they're seeing behaviors, they'll call us again and ask us, well, what do I do now? Mom's doing this. She didn't do this before. So we continue to either support those caregivers who were in our program and now they're no longer in our program, as well as those who have never been in our program when we bring them in there as well. Because I think one of the things, and that's why I said I love this for you in terms of that was your takeaway from with your mom, is a lot of our caregivers, I should say a lot, but I know there are caregivers that approach this as a burden initially. It's like, I didn't sign up for this. And particularly you get spouses, right? Definitely with an adult child and their parent, but with the spouse, no, I didn't sign up for this. Um, and to watch as we begin to work with them and how their perspective begins to change as they realize this doesn't have to be so burdensome, that there is joy. There are moments that you can find joy in. There are those times when your relationship with your loved one can be what it used to be. We had this one guy who his wife had dementia, and he was trying to manage it himself. They were both in their 80s, and he was trying to manage it himself. And when he found our program and she started coming to our program, and even though she didn't always remember him, sometimes she would get mad at him because she thought he was somebody else. She wanted to know where her husband was, right? But he said to us that by her being in daybreak, that it gave them their relationship back, because it gave him that space to breathe and to meet her wherever she is, versus trying to get her to meet him where he was. And that's the takeaway. And I think that's when you can find the beauty in the moments that you've talked about it, because you realized where your mom was and you could meet her there.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because the spouses and kids and family members do say, I didn't sign up for this. Well, you think they did? I mean, it's kind of like,
Oh yeah.
hello.
I'll take two of those, right?
Yeah, it's not, it isn't like that. And when you talk about um, getting the relationship back, I think that is one of the first things I wish doctors would say, is don't give your relationship over to any disease. It's still there. You can still have it. You have to adapt and look at your life. You've adapted all of your life. This is just another adaptation,
Hmm.
and learning to have flexibility, learning to let go of control, I think is one of the big issues that families have too.
I agreed.
And I know I'm kind of a type A personality and I've gotten better, but you know, I, I wanted to care the very best I could. I wanted excellent care and service. If I was delivering it, or a family member, or a friend, or a business, I just wanted that. And I probably was a little more hawkeye than I should be, because that's intimidating to people. But
Hmm.
yet, it took me a while to realize that, in that I have to do something that's good not only for them but for us.
Hmm.
You can't make the disease all about them, because you still have your relationship. So when you're looking to do something, look at something you both enjoy. That
Absolutely.
takes a lot of the edge off. And look at letting other people in. I realized when I was very much controlling things, that family and friends didn't feel like they could come in, because they'd ask how's it going. Oh, fine, got it under control. And then I'm like, why aren't they helping? And it's because I'm not letting them in. And I didn't even realize that. Or because of my personality style, they felt like they wouldn't be able to meet my
Hmm.
expectations, because
Okay.
instead of making dinner, they would want to go to McDonald's. And then one day I had this big revelation of, no matter how great I think I am, no one wants to be, tied to me 24/7, and my mom or dad or
Hmm.
your loved
Hmm.
one doesn't want to be tied to somebody either. We always talk about how we need a break, but they need a break from us too, and letting them have friends and other interactions, and so that you can come back and both kind of breathe together. And
Yeah,
um, I just think that is so important. And we don't talk about a lot of those things,
yeah, I agree.
with that. So, gosh, this has just been such a fun conversation. Anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to? I know we have to give people contact information, but anything else about the program?
Well, certainly if you're in the Detroit region, our phone number is 313 And you can also find our website address, which is Hannan, HANNAN.org, and Hannan Center on Instagram and Facebook. One of the things that we have been doing recently, because now that we're in the Medicare Medicaid enrollment period, we are doing what we call our Medicare Medicaid Mondays, giving people sort of bite-sized bits of information so that they can be prepared to sign up for Medicare during the enrollment season, and also avoid the costly mistakes that can come with that. You said you were 66, so I'm going to be 65 next year. And so I'm knee deep into trying to figure out, what is my Medicare going to look like? Should I be on Medicare Original, Medicare Advantage? It's enough to make you want to pull your hair out, right?
It
But
is, and then all the changes, so when you're
absolutely.
getting advice from people who have been on it, there's so many changes and so many less people out there to give advice. I know I went through a broker who's a friend of mine, and I've referred several people to her, and the last one called and said they're not taking any more people. There's not enough time in the day, because here in Minnesota, so many have gone out of business. you know
Yeah.
and so they're like, well, you can go to the website. And I'm like, hit a couple webinars, because they're all going to teach it a little bit different. And it is complicated, because you want to make sure that your medications are covered if you're on any, or if you're going to have any surgeries, or if you're worried
Hmm.
about a chronic illness in your family coming, how will that be covered? It's complicated. And then you got
It's
to
a
look at
lot to
your
think about.
budget. Yeah.
Look at your budget, and then also look at how the laws and regulations and policies are changing even as we speak. So yeah, it's complicated. As I forget who it was. I don't know if it was Betty Davis or whoever said it, but I think she said, "Getting old ain't for sissies."
Yeah.
So you really got to do your own due diligence, and I think it's better when you have a partner to join that journey with you,
Mhm.
because it's better to have two eyes better than one. So one said.
Yeah. Yeah. Even when you're going to the doctor or, looking at a program
Mhm.
like yours, bring a friend or a family member with,
Absolutely.
because it's overwhelming. No matter how excited you are about it, it's still overwhelming. When you go back and think, was that this place, or was, you know, did I ask that question? And, then you don't want to look like an idiot and call and ask a question you already asked, but, it's okay to do that. That's,
It is. Absolutely.
people would rather have you have your answers and stuff. So, well, thank you again so much for your time today. This has just been great. To our audience, I always ask you to be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share. If you want to download one of our graphics, one of our Giver of Hope graphics, please do that. We all have people in our sphere of influence that are dealing with things we don't know about. And so the more information we can spread in a friendly fashion and in a trusted fashion, it just makes it easier for people to get what they need when
Mhm.
they're ready for it. And that makes a huge difference. So thanks again, Vince. This has been fabulous. And I am so thrilled and so excited to know about your organization and how it came to be. I just think of the tenacity, of your leader there. It was just amazing how she fought for what she knew was right, even though it hadn't been around before. I kind of thought you guys might have been affiliated with the church.
No.
And so that is amazing how hard she fought to do something different, because she knew it was a need and that it's continued for 100 years. So have fun at your next event this week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Lori. I've enjoyed being on your show. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everyone.